Welcome to Life Sketches, a Chico, California steak podcast. I'm Melanie McLaughlin, and we're visiting today with Betty Dimmitt. Thank you so much for coming and talking with me today.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Will you start by telling us a little bit about your family as you grew up?
Okay, I grew up in southeastern Iowa on a farm, and since we've been talking, I have thought about it was on dirt roads. The first house we lived in had an outhouse, and I guess we had running water, but I don't remember. But we were on a dirt road. We had to walk to meet the school bus, about 2 miles, and that was on a gravel road then to go to town. I have 2 younger brothers. One of them has passed away. I can't think of anything else right now.
Okay, so a farm.
Yes.
What kinds of chores did you do on the farm?
I had the honor of getting the eggs, gathering eggs. And when I wouldn't do it, my folks had told me that sometimes black snakes like to get in the nest and eat the eggs. And so if I didn't get out before dark, I might run into a black snake.
Oh,
So
that encouraged you.
it encouraged me.
Is that true?
I don't know.
Okay, but it worked for
It
you.
worked.
Okay. And was that the majority of what you did?
I helped Mom in the garden. My brother went to the field with Dad. Dad would let Mom drive the tractor, but he wouldn't let me drive the tractor.
Okay.
I think he was probably afraid to.
Okay.
When I was 8th or 9th grade, I had a cow that I was to milk, and I only milked it in the evening. And then once I got in high school, I was pretty busy with things.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about the history of this farm and your family.
Oh, okay. Not the particular one that I grew up on, but a neighboring was our great-grandfather was in the Civil War, fought on the side of the North. And through some incident, I'm not quite sure, he came north to Iowa from Missouri and in 1864 and bought land. And I still have the deed for that. And then went back to Missouri and married, would be my great-grandmother, brought her up to Iowa. And so there's been somebody on that land since 1864.
Since then, someone in your family.
Yeah.
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 And the farm that you grew up on, is it still in your family today?
Yes. My brother has that, and what's left of it. He sold some of it off when he retired,
But still there.
it's still there, yeah.
Is there anyone in the younger generations that are going to take it over?
Nobody farms, but they have bought land and built houses.
So they're living
from my
there.
brother. So
Okay.
yeah, 2 nephews and whatever my brother's grandson is.
Okay. And then what did you think of farming? Did you enjoy that lifestyle? Dirt roads, gravel roads?
You know, when you don't know any different, it's okay. I did, when I was in college, I dated a guy who said he wanted to have a little acreage, 4 acres or so. And I just scoffed at him because we had a big lot of land there.
A lot more than 4 acres.
Oh, yeah.
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 And what did you go to college for?
To be a teacher. I went to Iowa State Teachers College.
And what grade did you teach?
I taught 2nd and 3rd grades
Okay.
in Iowa and then in California.
That's a fun age to teach.
Yeah.
There's a lot of energy there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is.
So you married Jim Dimmitt.
Yep.
Tell us how you met him.
I had a car, and he worked in a gas station. And this was when the guys who worked at the station, washed your windows, pumped your gas, checked your oil, checked your tires. That's just, when you went in, that's what they did. And I had heard there was this cute guy. This was in the town where my mother lived. And I went in to get gas one day just because I needed it. And this fellow came up, and he had the nicest smile. So I kept going back for gas. I was working in Keokuk, which was about 90 miles away from where Mom lived. And instead of going home once a month, I started going home oftener until he finally asked me out.
Okay. So you like to smile.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What else did you like about him?
Oh, gosh. I just liked him. But the smile was what got me.
Okay. And then you guys dated for a while, and then...
We dated, and he gave me a ring, and I had already scheduled a summer school in Colorado Springs. So I got on the train, my first train ride, went to Colorado Springs, my first mountains I'd ever seen. And during the summer, he took his mother and sister to California to visit a brother. And when I got back to Iowa, he had apparently lost his job and gone back to California, and he hadn't bothered to tell me about it.
So that was long distance?
It worked. I wrote. This was not when you had a cell phone or any phone,
Right.
because it cost too much. You had to wait till after 7 o'clock at night to call. And finally, I'd had it, and I sent his ring back.
What was his response to that?
I didn't keep the letter, but it wasn't very nice.
Oh, okay. He wasn't happy with it.
No.
And then somehow you guys made amends.
My roommates and I, the winter of 1957-58 was very cold and nasty in Iowa. And I parked my car uphill one afternoon, and it froze up to the hubcaps that night, and I had to walk to school for a week.
Oh, my goodness.
And I said to my roommates, let's go to California.
I hear the weather's better.
Well, yeah, I'd had 2 boyfriends that had done that.
And were you hoping to run into Jim again?
Not at that moment, no.
Okay.
No, I just wanted where it wasn't nasty.
You just wanted better weather?
Yes.
Okay. And so once you got out to California, tell us what happened.
Well, actually, I sent him a birthday card in February just because. And he eventually wrote back, and I wrote back. And finally, about April, I told him that we girls were coming to California. And then he really started writing. And so I had a chance to come out ahead of my 2 roommates. And I rode with my mother's boss's wife. And he met me in Hayward and took me down to Ontario where his brother and sister-in-law lived. And we stayed there several days. And finally he says, we're going to have to move. We're going to have to, at that time, we would get 2 separate apartments, which we couldn't afford. So we got married 11 days after I got to California.
And did that surprise your roommates?
Probably. By the time they got out here, we were married. I had been for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want one of my kids to do that, but oh well.
But it worked for you?
It worked. Yeah.
And were you and Jim, were you attending a church when you got married?
Yeah.
Which,
Sort of.
okay.
We were going to the Methodist church. I grew up in the Methodist church and attending regularly.
And what about him? Was he affiliated with the church?
Yeah, his dad would take the boys to church occasionally.
Methodist or a different one?
Methodist, I think it was.
Okay. So how did you 2 get connected with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Jim's oldest sister is just younger than my mother. So therefore, his oldest nephew was just younger than I.
Okay.
And his nephew was in the Air Force in Panama and met somebody who was a church member and joined the church there. He came home, talked to his mother, and the family joke was, well, Dorothy has joined every church in town. But once she joined the LDS church, she stuck with it. Anyway, she and her husband came out to Southern California, to Ontario, to visit with the 3 brothers that were out there. And we were the only ones who listened politely. In about 2 weeks then, we had missionaries at our door. So we listened, and Jim was very hard-nosed about it. Mm-hmm. So we got the stake missionaries coming out, and one day the missionaries were at the house one afternoon, and Jim came home in a wrecker with a car on the back. He'd rear-ended somebody on the on-ramp.
Not in a very good mood, I bet.
Not in a good mood. And they went right dashing out, wanting, are you ready to be baptized? And he says, no, get out of here and don't come back. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't till February that somebody came back. And we were baptized on March 4th of 1964. I was 7 months pregnant with our third child.
With your third one.
Mm-hmm.
So what has it been like for you to change denominations?
I think I had a good foundation in the Bible. In the Bible stories, I knew them. And I think I believed in Jesus Christ. So there wasn't that to go through. But we had been upset with our Methodist preacher because we called him out to our house. We were going to make a trip to Iowa, and we thought our two little kids should be baptized. And he said, well, we've decided that it isn't necessary to baptize little ones. And we thought, who is this we that can make this decision? So I don't recall ever going to church there again. Mm-hmm. And this was maybe a year or so before we were introduced to the LDS Church.
Do you remember what it was that really attracted you to the LDS Church?
Well, we had friends who were in it, which I think makes a difference. Mm-hmm. And it just answered some of the questions I'd had as a kid. I used to wonder, how good do you have to be to go to heaven? And how bad can you be before you can't?
Before you don't make it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that question was answered, and I can't remember the others, but there were 2 or 3 questions I'd had that were answered.
Mm-hmm. And so you had 2.5 kids when you got baptized.
Yeah.
How many kids did you and Jim have?
We have 5.
And tell us about the rest of your family, grandkids and great-grandkids.
Okay. I have 24 grandkids. We have 24 grandkids, and currently 33 great-grandkids. But there's one due next month and one due in January, too.
Okay, so you'll have 35.
Yeah.
What kinds of things do you do to keep connected with them?
Modern equipment, modern things are very nice because we text, we email, we Facebook. And when I go to visit, then they come to see me, and their kids know who I am, and that's very touching to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do many of them live close to you?
No.
None of them?
No.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch in Idaho. My middle daughter lives there, and all of her 7 kids are up there in Utah and Idaho. My oldest daughter lives in Tennessee now, as of 2 years ago. And she has family there and in Arkansas and in Sacramento. I guess I do have 2 grandkids in Sacramento and their families.
Some kind of close, but not right in Chico.
No.
Okay. What are some traditions that you have with your family?
Well, traditions change through the years. And we used to get together on Christmas morning. Now, as the kids got older and they got more, that was impossible. So they come to my house. Anybody who can comes to my house for conference. And I don't see a lot of conference on the Sunday they're there, but I can always look at it later, and I can sit there and enjoy them.
Mm-hmm. What do you do activities together at conference, or just sit and watch it together?
Watch it and eat and visit.
Food is a big part of conference. Yeah. So your husband passed away, I can't remember what year. Is it
2003?
2003.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about that experience?
Well, he retired in 1999 from the newspaper. He was a publisher here of the Enterprise Record. And he kept thinking that he was getting older. Stairs were getting harder. We were in a 2-story at the time. And his hands weren't working as well, and he thought it was age. And finally came to the point, I said, we need to go to the doctor. So he went, and one doctor sent him to another doctor who said, I think you have motor neuron disease. And we both said, what's that? And the doctor said, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. I knew what that was, but he didn't. So we got out of the little room, and he says, what is that? I said, Tuesdays with Maury. If you haven't read or seen that, we had seen the movie. So he knew. We knew. So it wasn't, we started going to a doctor down in San Francisco, a clinic down there for that, and reached the point where he didn't want to go, and that was okay.
And so was it just a couple of years knowing that he had that condition before he passed away?
Probably not even a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've been on your own for 20 years.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Almost as long as I was single in the beginning.
Okay. So that can be a challenge. What have you done to make a life for yourself without him?
Well, in the beginning, after he passed away, we had a one-story house built, which was marvelous because he couldn't do stairs anymore. And I loved working in the garden, so I worked in the yard and garden, and I would go visit my kids and for the first year until one day I thought, I'm not having fun anymore.
Too much yard and garden.
So I hired a gardener. But I still worked out there a lot. But yeah, I did that. I had always wanted to join the Quilt Guild. I did that in 2005. And got at that same time, there was a small group of quilters that met together that I was a part of, and we have been part of our group since then to now.
So almost 20 years with your small group, 18, 19 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time to quilt.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of your favorite types of quilts to make.
I like mostly traditional. I like the star quilts. What started me quilting, and I don't think I mentioned that when we were talking before, was in 1994, I only had 9 grandchildren, which seemed like a lot. And I thought, in October, I'm going to make them all a quilt for Christmas. Which,
That's ambitious.
That's ambitious, yes. Well, some of them got a promise, Some of them got a quilt. But that kind of started me on it. And then I thought, well, I can do more. So I tried different things. And so each grandchild, as they were born, would get, within the first 2 years, would get a twin-size quilt. Each great-grandchild gets a smaller quilt, baby-size quilt. When they get married, I make a queen-size quilt for them. So that isn't all I've done, but that's
quite a number of quilts.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy about quilting?
I like cutting up fabric and putting it back together differently. I do like that part. I'm not much of an art quilter. But I sewed for my kids when they were growing up, for my girls. And I don't know, there's just something about sewing that's satisfying.
It's very satisfying.
And you don't have to make it fit with a quilt.
Right. Yeah. Can just be one big piece that drapes over you.
Lots of little pieces put together to make one big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you quilt on a daily basis?
I would say I sew at least 5 days a week. It might not be a lot, but I sew and then I read and then I read and then I sew. And
so reading is a big part of your time.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah.
What kinds of things do you like to read?
I like science fiction and fantasy. I like something I read fast that's decent. I don't like the garbagey things. The ones I call fluff, I read. So I just read a lot. I pay for Kindle Unlimited. I think that's what it's called, where you get free books. And, if you buy books, you have them on your shelf. It's nice to be able to share them, but your shelves run out after a while.
Yeah, they do.
So I just read the free ones. And sometimes if I've read it so fast, I will read it again in a year or two because I forgot.
And do you join in any book clubs?
I never have, no. I just ask my friends in book clubs, what are they reading?
Okay, so you get recommendations
And
from
suggest
people.
something that I've seen. Yeah.
Have you been able to travel very much?
I haven't, and I think that's my own fault. I could. On occasion, I've been to Hawaii a couple of times with couple of my kids, and I've gone to Branson a couple of times, which I enjoyed. But I guess maybe I'm chicken to get out there by myself.
It's a little bit scary.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you like to go with someone if you travel somewhere?
I would, yeah, I think. Only I don't know if we'd enjoy each other's company.
You've gotten kind of used to living on your own.
Yeah.
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 What kind of advice would you give to, I think there's probably a lot of people that find themselves in a situation similar to yours where they've raised a family and find themselves alone. What kind of advice would you give?
Well, I suppose, first of all, I'd say don't just sit around and feel sorry for yourself. You can have a little of that, but then it's time to pass on that. It's nice to have hobbies. It's nice to have friends. And, between the church and my church friends and the quilt guild, when you go to the doctor, they say, do you have any support group? I say, oh, yeah. So I think you need, it's you have to have something to do.
Keep yourself busy.
Yes. And I tell that to my friends who are men. You need a hobby. You need something to do. Because you're not going to work all your life, hopefully.
And then once you retire and don't know what you like to do,
Yeah.
that's a challenge.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give to your posterity? It can be your kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, any of them.
Well, I told one granddaughter at a graduation party, I said, always stay close to the church. Not all of mine are at the moment, but I think that's important. And don't be critical. It's hard not to be critical.
It's really hard not to be critical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So stay close to the church. Make a life. Do something. So you're not just sitting around bewailing the fact that you're alone or I don't know what.
Or life is hard.
Yeah, it is hard. So what? Go ahead. Live it.
What did your husband, Jim, do for work?
When we were married, he was working in an NAPA auto parts store. A few years later, he got a job in a newspaper. And actually, he was shoveling the ink out from underneath the presses at that time. He's very good with people, and he was promoted, and so the last 3 positions, we moved between North and South California for a couple or 3 times. The last position, he was publisher of newspapers in Red Bluff and in Ontario. And then we came to Chico. He was publisher of the newspaper.
Did he ever write for newspapers?
No, he was one of the few people who came up through the press room. And they used to make advertised that in his company's.
That he had experience in the press room.
Yes.
Okay, so of your 5 kids, tell us a little bit about them.
Okay, people here in Chico know James. Everybody knows James, I guess. And actually, he's working in Sacramento now. He's the youngest. I'm going to start from the youngest and go up.
Okay.
He started out as after his mission, he went to school to be an EMT and then paramedic, and then he went into the police academy. So he's still working in law enforcement, but not as a policeman as such. And they have 4 children, a girl and 3 boys. Mary is my next, and she lives in Redding. She works in Red Bluff. She's an office manager for a veterinary clinic and studying to be a vet tech because she likes all that yucky stuff. And she has 5 children. And she has 2 boys and 3 girls also. Shelley is the one that I was expecting when we joined the church. She lives in Idaho. She has 7 children, and she's a busy lady. And she graduated in education, and then she had a chance to be a substitute when her kids were little. She said that's too much work. She had too many kids to run around, so she's stayed at home and been very busy. Mark is the next to the oldest. He has always worked in construction, and he's building big buildings all over right now in Manteca. And Becky is the oldest. Mark has 3 children. Becky has 5, 3 girls and 2 boys. Must be a pattern there. Mm-hmm. When her youngest was in high school, she went back to school to be a PA, and she's gone on and gotten further education with that. So she's working in that sort of thing. She started out in Red Bluff. They moved to Sacramento, and then my son-in-law retired twice from law enforcement and wanted to go back where it was green. So they are now in Tennessee, where their youngest lives.
Have you been able to go back and visit them?
No, I haven't been back there. I've only gone as far as Idaho.
As far as Idaho.
Yeah.
Tennessee's right next to Kentucky, and they're both beautiful states.
And that's where your folks, or your dad
yes,
anyways, from,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, my mom's from there.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I didn't remember.
Yeah, your kids sound all very active and involved and busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are.
Well, thank you so much for coming and talking with us. It was fun. I love hearing about quilting, and it was fun hearing more about your family and your history.
Well, thank you so much. It's nice visiting with you.